an assistant professor at IIT BHU Varanasi. He completed his PhD in mechanical engineering from NTU Singapore and postdoctoral fellowship from Energy Research Institute at the NTU Singapore. His presentation will explore the discerning aspects of cool surfaces in reducing heat buildup on urban heat elements such as roofs, walls, and roads, with a focus on Singapore's tropical climate. It will also examine the impact of cool roads on pedestrian comfort, including critical assessment of their performance. So, welcome, Dr. Kiran. Our next speaker is Dr. Ritika Kapoor. She is a climate and health specialist working at NRDC India. She works at the intersection of climate change, particularly extreme heat and its impact on health. Before joining NRDC, Dr. Ritika has completed her PhD on the intersection of heat and health from CMCC Italy and UCL London. The title of her talk is Advancing Cool Roof in Indian Cities. So she basically will present the case study from Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan, where NRDC India has implemented some cool roof on some buildings. So welcome, Dr. Ritika. We have Dr. Ranavir Pratap Singh, who will share the context of this webinar talk today. Ranavir is working at AEEE as a principal research associate in sustainable cooling and cold chain vertical. Welcome, Dr. Ranavir, and you can take it from here.
Thank you, Santosh, and good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to all the participants and the distinguished speakers joining us today for this important webinar titled Reducing Heat Stress and Cooling Demand in India's Built-in Landscape. So, as we begin, let's remind ourselves of the national aspiration that guides us all, the Viksit Bharat 2047 vision of transforming India into a prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable developed nation. But as we march towards this vision, we must also confront a pressing reality check. Our cities and buildings, the spaces where we live, work, and learn, are increasingly under stress from rising heat. Across India, as per IMD 2023 data, the year 2023 was amongst the hottest year on record, and another study by World Bank estimates that extreme heat is already costing the country over 100 billion working hours every year and threatening up to 4.5% of our GDP by 2030. And it's not just statistic, it's a lived experience for millions. So also urban areas are hit even harder. For instance, Delhi, it has recorded up to 5 degrees higher surface temperature in dense built up zones compared to surrounding areas. And as per the reports, over 50% of Indian districts accommodating approximately 3/4 of our population are now at high to very high risk for extreme heat. So, and at the same time, our cooling needs are rising sharply. As India Cooling Action Plan projects, the overall cooling demand could grow by 8-fold by 2037 and 38, with buildings alone using nearly half of that energy. Alongside air conditioning ownership also rising fast, and it could jump from just 12% today to over 40% by 2037-38, adding up to 180 gigawatts to our peak power demand. So that's what makes today's session basically so timely and important. And we will be exploring how alternate cooling technologies, cool surfaces, passive design strategies, uh, etc., can help us reduce heat stress, lower cooling demand, and build resilient, climate resilient and comfortable spaces. So we are privileged to have with us two eminent speakers who bring complementary perspective from research and practice. Professor Kiran Kumar from IIT BHU and Dr. Ritika Kapoor, climate and health specialist at NRDC India. I look forward to an engaging session that helps us move from data to action. So with that, I once again welcome all our speakers and participants, and I invite Professor Kiran Kumar to deliver the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ranveer, and thank you, AAA colleagues, for arranging this session to share my work on cool surfaces. Let me share the screen first. Yeah, I hope it is visible. I'll put it on a full screen.
Coming.
Yeah. So my talk is going to be on the studies that I had done while I was in Singapore, the cool surfaces building as well as on pavements and its impact on the urban heat. I'm currently an assistant professor at IIT BHU, as the AAA colleagues have already mentioned. So why is it important to mitigate urban heat? We all face the heat during summers, right? Peak summers. And it is estimated over 3 billion population across the globe are directly affected. There could be a direct or indirect impacts. Direct impact that we face is the discomfort, the heat stress during summers, and probably the higher energy consumption in air-conditioned buildings. The indirect effect, I think Ranveer has also mentioned, the impact on the GDP. You know, it is estimated that the urban heat could cause up to 11% on the economic output, the GDP, by the year by the end of the century. Okay, so looking at the scale of the impact, I think it is important that in my talk I am going to talk the issue and the science behind the issue and the solutions that we had implemented in the context of Singapore. Singapore also falls under a tropical climate. Then the policy that the Singapore government has taken on the basis of the work that we did. So if you look at the factors which is actually causing the urban heat, it is the heat that is absorbed in terms of solar radiation by the urban surfaces, which are typically hard concrete surfaces and paved asphalt surfaces on roads. So is the reflectance of the albedo, which talks about the reflectance of these surfaces. If the surfaces are more absorptive, they can have more heat absorbed, retained in the buildings, in the built-up area. Second is, it's not just the heat that is absorbed on the surface, it's the heat that is transmitted inside the building. And when we cool the spaces, the heat is, rejected out to the building in the form of anthropogenic heat, and also the heat that is generated in the combustion process of mobility devices, the transport devices on road surfaces. And as we make more denser construction in cities, there is also little possibility of natural ventilation around the buildings. So the city ventilation is usually hindered by tall structures. And as we make more and more built up areas, the natural surfaces, which include the vegetation, the water bodies, the soft surfaces are actually being reduced. All this in somewhere or other, I think, causing the heat in urban areas. And if you look at the relative importance of these factors, what studies says that, the first parameter is the surface reflectance. because it's the heat absorption and retention is mainly dependent on the surface property, and followed by the green cover. Of course, we cannot ignore the natural surfaces. Then the anthropogenic heat, uh, and the urban morphology, which would depend on various factors like, the street geometry, street configuration, the development density, essentially. And last but not least is also the climate, the climatic conditions when it comes to the sky conditions, because moisture in the atmosphere also could impact the heat within the atmosphere. And then the wind conditions, as we have seen in the previous slide, also would impact. So there are various solutions that we talk about to mitigate the heat. I think I've just put some glimpses of some solutions that I've come across, which have been implemented across the globe. So the first solution is the watering the roads. I think France has this, like in Paris, in peak summers, they get this water tank going around the roads, and in the evenings, they spray the water across the road surfaces, which gives the cooling effect in the evenings. In that context, there are also these porous concrete pavements that have been developed, and the implementation of these surfaces is still under experimentation. But so this is one of the potential solutions that we are looking at, because they could also release the heat and probably drain the water surfaces naturally. So it helps both for infiltration as well as the cooling effect. And the second solution that we are talking about is the dry mist cooling, which has been implemented for cooling the outdoor areas. So this again could be an issue if the moisture condition in the atmosphere is higher. Then the third solution is a combination of, so this is again from Singapore, where they have used blowers to, circulate, to increase the air circulation in the outdoor areas, along with the water fountains you see here and vegetation. And there is also shading that is created in the open area. So all this together actually creating the cooling effect. And another solution that is under experimentation, I think maybe a few locations they have implemented this technological solution, is the radiant cooling system, which is cooling in the form of radiation. So the cooled surfaces actually interact with the people and then provide the cooling effect who are around those surfaces. So I think in India, I think a couple of projects I have come across where it is being used in the amphitheaters, outdoor theaters, which are radiant cooled. So when people are sitting for the outdoor activities, so the cooling effect is happening due to the radiant system there. Then architecturally, I think self-shaded brick facade is also seen as one of the solutions, because it could actually help shade the wall and reduce the heat that is absorbed by the wall surfaces. And it's in the same context, evaporatively cooled facade. A Delhi-based startup actually has experimented this particular technology a lot, especially in open areas, open spaces, where the water is poured across the brick surfaces, which are porous. So due to evaporative phenomena, this cooling is provided. And when we talk about vegetation, there have been a lot of studies where vegetation is seen as a cooling solution for urban areas. But it is important to see what sort of landscape features that we are integrating in when we talk about vegetation. Like so, if it is a littoral or riparian vegetation, which would include different types of vegetation characteristics, starting from the grass or shrubs and trees. And if you're talking about shading open areas which are concretely paved, to minimize the blanket effect in the night, because the street canopy can also minimize the heat escape from the ground surfaces in the night. So in that context, these Nyctinaceae plants or the tree species which has a behavior of closing their leaves in the night could be also a solution under vegetation. So now let us try to understand some fundamental aspect of this heat removal from the atmosphere. If we imagine the entire atmosphere as an enclosure, we can talk about different heat transfer phenomena. When we talk about heat transfer phenomena, heat can be converted from one form to the other form. Like when we are talking about watering or greening, it's mostly the evaporation or transpiration that we are talking, which is giving that cooling effect. And there are also technologies like thermoelectricity, which converts the heat from the thermal to the electrical energy, which have been integrated to mitigate heat. So this is one form of heat transfer conversion we are talking about. Then the second set of solution that we talk about usually are the PCM phase change materials, which can retain the heat and then delay the heat re-emission process, and then thermal storage, which also acts like PCMs. Then the thermochromic materials, depending on the temperature, the surface can behave, the reflectance of the surface could actually change. So all these technologies can be put under as one phenomena of heat, that is storage. Like they are essentially storing the heat and minimizing, and that way, they are seen as heat mitigation solutions. Then the third set of strategies that we are talking about is the cool materials. There are also a lot of research developed, developed to develop spectrally selective coatings. Now we are talking about radiative coolings, which can actually radiate the heat back to the space, because the radiation can transmit through the vacuum space. So if you look at these three phenomena of heat conversion and heat storage or heat reflection or re-emission, so only this set of solutions can have the potential to go beyond the atmosphere. Otherwise, the heat can be, converted in from one form to other form, which would still remain within the atmosphere. And there have been studies, like measurements done using satellites from above the atmosphere, that for every 1% increase in, 10% increase in urban albedo can have an effect of 50 watt per meter square reflection from the surface on the ground. What are cool materials? I think most of you must be aware the darker surfaces absorb more heat and lighter surfaces reflect heat. But when we talk about the reflection, it is the spectral reflection across the solar radiation spectrum between 300 nanometer to around 3000 nanometers. So these are two lines that represent one very high reflective route, which is reflective in nature across the spectrum. The second is the asphalt road, which is have a very low reflectance of 0.1. Going a little more in detail about the behavior of the solar radiation through the atmosphere, I think about out of the total intensity of solar radiation, 5% comes under ultraviolet, 43%. The majority of the heat is actually coming from the near infrared spectrum, more than 50%. And if you see the behavior of the radiation transmission through atmosphere, atmosphere has these two windows at different spectral ranges. So what happens within the atmosphere is, because of the atmospheric gases and moisture, the transmission behavior would change. So the whatever solar spectrum that we are talking about within this range has a potential to reflect. The visible light can be reflected through the solar window. It is important that we minimize the heat gain on the surfaces and reflect it back. And once the heat is, retained, and then it is transferred in the form of thermal radiation can emit back to the space through the atmospheric window, that is at a little higher spectral window, about 3000 to 10,000 nanometers. Then within the like urban areas would consist of a typical street canvas, as you see in this picture. Then going in further in understanding about what is actually causing the heat between the buildings within a street. So the heat, the solar radiation, when it is incident on a particular surface, it would have a reflective behavior depending on what kind of reflective surface is it, whether it's a specular surface or a diffuse surface. Diffuse reflection is most common what we see. Then the heat that is absorbed would be conducted or re-radiated back to the environment. The same phenomena happens in the atmosphere also. The atmospheric moisture or the clouds can absorb the heat and re-emit back. And so when we talk about the energy balance in terms of heat within the street, we talk about both the solar short wave reflection, which is in the lower spectral range, and the long wave balance, which is in a higher spectrum, solar spectrum. So the especially short wave solar spectrum balance depends on the surface characteristics. That's where we talk about the albedo here. So so albedo talks about reflection. The amount of incident radiation multiplied by the albedo will give you how much of the heat would be retained on a surface. Similarly, for long wave, once the heat is absorbed, and we also getting the long wave radiation from the surrounding as well as from the sky because of the heat that is present. And balancing these short wave and long wave balances with along with the surface heat transfer in terms of conduction, convection, radiation would help us to understand what is actually, whether it is convection that is helping us to reduce the heat within the urban environment. So taking the context of Singapore, as I mentioned in the initial slide, so this the experimental study that I'm going to present in the next couple of slides is been done in the case of Singapore. Singapore is very close to equator. All the this is a land use map. The upper one that you see, all the dark areas are like the highly built up areas, and the below one that you see is the thermograph, which is representing the surface temperatures across this land use. And you can see the higher temperatures are directly related to the densities across the cities. And Singapore being located in a tropical area, the annual insolation means the incident radiation is up to the 1680 kilowatt per meter square. And throughout the year, they don't have much seasonal variation. The temperature is higher, but they also have rainfall. There are few months where they have no rainfall, and then it's typically less daytime and nighttime temperature difference. So based on the theory that we have seen, we understand that the reflection is a key strategies to mitigate the heat. But so far we have not seen any substantial implementation to understand this phenomena at city level. We have, if you look at the literature, people have done studies, simulation studies, but the actual implementation is a bit rare. So in that context, the study that we had done, we wanted to do a simultaneous comparison, a side-by-side comparison with the cool materials on a building surfaces without cool materials on the other street. So we selected the site also in such a way that there is a simultaneous monitoring happening. We had deployed over 100 plus sensors to understand the thermal environment within this street. Say, place sensors over the roof, across the height of the street, and along the street also. So these environmental sensors essentially give us the temperature, heat, and the radiation behavior on these surfaces, along with the net radiation that we talked about in terms of short wave and long wave balance. So these are the pictures of some of the setup that we had. One street without the cool surfaces, the other street where we had put cool surface as on the road, on the wall, as well as on the roof. It's a combined impact that we wanted to see, and this gives a glimpse of what is the maximum reduction that we found. The roof surfaces, roofs are here. It is a metal roof, insulated metal deck, which has a maximum temperature reduction up to 25 degrees in the peak day during a day. During the peak heat, then followed by the road surface, which had a maximum surface temperature reduction up to 12 degrees. With the, you can see the reflectance increase from the base case from conventional 0.3 to 0.88, almost like more than 50% of reflection has been there for the roof surface, and this is same for the road surface. Then we also wanted to understand, since there is a limitation for experimental, we could do only for the street level experimentation. We wanted to see its impact at a larger scale, at a district level, when like multiple buildings are there. So for that, we used computer simulation, which we could not find a single simulation tool which can give you accurate prediction of what would be the impact of cool surfaces. So in terms of physics, it is essential that we understand the radiation balance, the thermal behavior on the surfaces, and the dynamics of the air across the buildings. So it is a combination. So we did a coupled modeling using different simulation tools. So it was both radiation, thermal, and fluid dynamics modeling that we had done using different tools. So as you see here, Solin is a tool that is being used for the radiation balance, which talks about the building form factors and the reflection, the multi-reflections within the buildings. And then NVBET is the tool where we have developed a thermal model to understand, based on the radiation model, the heat transfer that is, resulted with on the radiation, and the fluid dynamics, which is a quick URB. So the results of all the three are combined together, like with the same reference conditions, to evaluate the microclimate within the buildings and understand the effect of these pool surfaces across the building. So this is the scale of the site that we simulated, multiple buildings. And while simulating, we also validated those simulation results along with the measurements, since we had done the experiment, the real scale experiment within the same site. So this is a kind of output visualization that you have from a radiation simulation, from a fluid dynamics, the wind simulation, and a thermal simulation, the combination of these two in result of this. So this helps us to understand what is the kind of surface characteristics with pool's surface in terms of surface temperature and air temperature within the street canyons. Our experiment actually has helped us to understand the surface heat flux behavior in terms of, so the yellow arrows that you see on the left hand side actually tells about what is the incident radiation in terms of short wave and long wave. And when the surface is reflective, there is a possibility to increase the short wave reflection. So from, for a conventional surface, the reflection is lower, almost like 2 units per meter square, whereas for a high reflective surface, it can increase more than double. And when the reflection is increased, the heat absorption is, all the arrow sizes that here are the proportional to the numbers that you see. The heat absorption within the roof slab has been reduced because of the reflection. So when the absorption is reduced, the long wave re-emission is also back to the environment is reduced. So that way, at surface level, because of reflection, the heat absorption, the re-emission has been addressed, and that is helping to improve the heat convection around the surfaces. Similarly, for road also, you can see the reduction in terms of the heat absorption on the road surface. We have taken a measurement up to about 0.5 meter depth on the road. So considering that it's about, in road, because of its high thermal mass, you can see the long wave, short wave reflection is higher, and the long wave reflection is also, so long wave re-emission is also significant. Then the simulation model that I presented has different parametric cases wherein we wanted to see if we, and this would actually help to assist government in framing policies in terms of whether all the cool roofs, all the roofs need to be, supplied with the cool surfaces, or it's road or wall, or combination of all the three. So what you see here, when all the surfaces, roof, wall, and road, are implemented with the cool surface, there is a maximum reduction possibility in terms of air temperature. And then a next possible reduction is along with, if the roads are a concern with using reflective surfaces, then cool roofs and walls also have a significant surface area on the buildings. They also absorb and retain, though they are vertical and get the less incident radiation, they have a significant impact after all cool case. So cool roof and wall has a maximum reduction in terms of temperature reduction. I think last year I have come across this particular study, which was done in Riyadh, where they have also used computer modeling for simulating a large area, much larger than the site that we had done in Singapore. In Riyadh, being a desert climate, they have actually observed the temperature reduction up to 4.5 degrees by implementing cool surfaces and greenery. And you must have seen in the news also in Los Angeles, almost like 1 million square feet of roads have been implemented with cool paints, and they have actually observed up to 4.5 degrees reduction in the temperature because of the reflective road surfaces that they have. And there are various technologies that you can see which the materials in terms of road, they would not actually give you a specular reflection, but rather a diffuse reflection because of the kind of ingredients that they use in the reflective paint. And we extended the study further in to observe its impact in a large high-rise buildings. Like this is a residential apartment in Singapore only. This study has been published very recently, where we have again implemented cool wall, cool roof, and roofs, and a side-by-side comparison we have done. And the results were very much similar to what we have seen. The temperature reduction within the steep canyon is up to 2 degrees in the daytime because of the cooling effect that we have seen. And around that time, Singapore government has, wanted to pilot one large district of 130 housing blocks in Tampines area, where they wanted to implement not just cool roofs, but also other possible cooling solutions like vegetation and all, to see its effect on mitigating the heat. Very recently, a few months ago, I think after seeing the results from their pilot, now as part of their green town policy, Singapore government has announced that by year 2030, all the housing blocks, which is about like 80% of the housing construction is by the Housing Development Board in Singapore. So they would be, since they have a repair and repair schedule every 5 years, so repair and repainting schedule, by end of 2030, they wanted to implement cool surfaces across all the housing blocks in Singapore. So that's a major step that we can see. Singapore, of course, being a smaller country, it is easier for them to implement such strategies. So now I think when we talk about cool materials, people are actually skeptical about, its reflection and its impact on the surroundings. One fundamental issue that we need to understand is what kind of reflection we are talking about. Usually for surfaces with a matte finish, has a more diffuse reflection compared to mirror-like surfaces. So yeah, I'll take another 5 minutes and close this presentation if I'm taking more time. Then it is important, the reflection is not coming within the view angle of the people who are walking along the streets, whether it is if it is implemented on road surface or on a wall surface. So in that context, this image will help you to understand if the cool surface is put on this road, and you're talking about the pedestrians walking on the pavement along the road. The person is having a very low view factor to the road surface adjacent to it. The reflection impact is much lower compared to the other areas which is having a higher view factor. Okay, so it is important to look at what is the view factor the human is actually having with the surrounding surfaces when we talk about the impact of reflection and glare. So essentially now to conclude, the urban surfaces when implemented with cool materials has effect of reducing the heat retention in buildings by reflection, and that heat retention can actually help to improve the thermal environment in terms of reducing the air temperature. What we have seen in our study about up to maximum 2 degrees during the daytime, which helped the government to take a call to implement on a large scale. So we had, published several scientific journals based on the studies we had, and this study has been published in the global media also. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take.
Thanks, Dr. Kiran Kumar. We invite next speaker, Dr. Ritika, present and share thoughts.
And for any questions, we will be taking all questions all together at the end of both presentations. So please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box.
Okay, just a second. Is my screen visible for everybody?
Yes, Ritika, we can.
Is my okay? It's visible, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for invitation for this talk. First of all, ICC and AEEE, and really interesting presentation um, uh, by Professor. So, in my presentation, I'd be talking more about the implementation aspect that we are doing at Natural Resource Defense Council, talking more about the intersection of how we are trying to expand our extreme heat work and bringing in the aspect of various passive cooling strategies and sharing some on-ground experiences from the states that we are working in, which is Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan. But I'll just take a minute here to talk about NRDC, which is a 50-year-old global nonprofit. We are 700 scientists, lawyers, and experts across the globe. And NRDC India, which I'm part of, is an independent subsidiary organization based in New Delhi. We have long-standing partnerships with the leading Indian organizations that are mentioned here, and we work across 5 focus areas from past 12 years in energy growth and access, cooling and energy efficiency, climate resilience and health, clean transportation, and climate goals. And the cool roof work and any passive cooling strategy work that we are doing, it is an important piece of work both for the cooling and energy efficiency and climate resilience and health teams. In terms of our approach that we take for our extreme heat work and passive cooling strategy, the first element is applied analysis to understand the health benefits or co-benefits of adaptation or any mitigation measure that we're employing. Second important aspect is capacity building with local partners. So at NRDC, whether it's cool roof work or our heat action plans, we are working with our on-ground grassroots partners, Mahila Housing Trust, and various other organizations in different verticals to implement these solutions and to reach vulnerable populations. And then we are working with central, state, city level governments, trying to get their buy-in, also doing these little pilots with their support. And then communication and outreach is also a very important aspect to build momentum on the adaptation action. So before just starting Cool Roof, I want to take some time to reflect on our heat action plan work. So the first heat action plan that was launched in South Asia and first heat action plan for India was launched in Ahmedabad in 2013, where NRDC played a crucial role for this heat action plan. And it focused on various aspects like building public awareness, capacity building, and initiating early warning. But what came out as an extension of this heat action plan in 2017 was introduction of Cool Roof initiative, where 3,000 slum households were painted in this cool roof program in partnership with private sector CSR activities and volunteer program. And as part of this cool roof work, municipal buildings and government schools were also were deployed with cool roof. So here you can see some pictures from the 2017 pilot that we did in Ahmedabad, and here you can see the mayor of then that time mayor painting the cool roof here. In 2023, very recently, we also launched the Jodhpur Heat Action Plan. This Heat Action Plan was something that came out with a round of consultation with some vulnerable communities. We did a stakeholder consultation along with Jodhpur Nagar Nigam North, NRDC, and then Mahila Housing Trust playing a crucial role in this. And there is a community action group that asked for this heat action plan as well as inclusion of cool roofs as part of this heat action plan. So on the right side, you can see a snippet of the heat action plan, a vulnerability assessment that we did, which I'll just kind of reflect on in the next slides. And then as part of this cool roof, as part of this heat action plan, around 1,651 houses in Jodhpur were painted with these cool roofs. You can see some pictures here. They were implemented across 9 slums. And for this, what we did with Mahila Housing Trust was that the residents from the slums, majorly women, they participated in this roof painting, and all the beneficiaries, they applied these paints. They were given some basic training on how to apply these cool roof paints. So as much as we're working towards cool roof intervention, the idea was to also do some capacity building of the slum residents. This is just one of the other cooling interventions that we employed as part of the heat action plan. That was installation of cooling center. This cooling center was deployed in a high risk ward, and when we did an analysis just to see what is the difference between the temperatures in the cooling station and outside the cooling station. We saw a difference of 12 degrees. So this is just kind of reflecting on some interventions that we do in addition to the cool roof pilot. In terms of mixed method, so there is a mixed method approach we usually apply when we are working on heat action plans to understand how the cool roof or how any cooling strategy should be brought in. The first aspect that we focused for our cities that we were working in, that is Lucknow in Uttar Pradesh and Jodhpur in Rajasthan, was to have structured questionnaires that were administered to households. Also making combined quantitative questions on temperature reduction, trying to understand the energy use, and also like tapping into household experiences. Then in terms of quantitative data, we took in account the indoor temperature that was recorded every 10 minutes by the data loggers. So there were cool roof houses and then there were non-cool roof houses. And we deployed these data sensors in both the houses to do a comparative analysis. And these readings were continuous and they were monitored continuous. Again, for this initiative, the slum residents or the low-income housing people, they were trained on how to use these sensors and how to get the recording and the data in a more effective way. We also looked into qualitative data, trying to look into pre and post intervention surveys, captured perceptions of heat stress, health impacts, and coping strategies. Spatial vulnerability assessment, which is HVRA, heat wave risk assessment we did for Jodhpur, and we took in account 3 different factors which helped us guide household selection in high-risk wards. So I'll first take the case of Jodhpur, for which we did this heat risk assessment. We analyzed the exposure sensitivity and adaptive capacity, which is a function of vulnerability. For exposure, I mean, it's the presence and extent to which people get affected. Sensitivity is something, the degree to which a system can get affected by extreme heat or changing climate. And adaptive capacity is the ability of the social or ecological system to adjust to climate change and also to adjust to moderate potential damages. So these 3 indicators we took, and the parameters that were used under these 3 indicators are mentioned here. Something like land surface temperature, population density, looking into number of slum households, literacy rate, female population, and adaptive capacity like access to parks, urban health centers, and then water index and road sensitivity and so on. So this is what the risk score looked for Jodhpur, and what we did were we kind of distinguished between the high, moderate, low zones, and we deployed the cool roofs in the high risk score wards. So this score assessment helped us to analyze which zone, which ward, and what low income housing we can go and deploy these cool roofs in. For the process of cool roof, the first step was to train the team about the importance of cool roof paint. With the slum dwellers, we worked on this, and also to how to apply these solar reflective white paints, how to capture the data. There was a rapport building also done with Mahila Housing Trust, did this rapport building with the community members, coordination with multiple stakeholders. And also, while implementation of solar reflective white paint was happening, there was identification of vendor by MHT, cleaning the roof, pre-post implementation data collection, and so on. For once this process was done, for just going through the methodology of impact assessment and how we wanted to create some evidence, once the data loggers were installed both in cool roof and non-cool roof painted houses, the data was selected for 5 continuous days. So any days when the data was not missing, we collected it for 5 days when the data was entirely available, and same dates were used for both, of course, paired houses, control and case houses. And the data analysis was done in terms of we saw average, maximum, and minimum temperature differences. So these are some of the pictures that where these cool roof deployment was done in the 5 slums in Jodhpur. This is what we saw. So on the top left, you can see temperature difference between average temperatures. Here we're taking the entire average of the cool roof and non-cool roof houses. So non-cool roof is in orange and cool is the cool roof house. So this is an average, and then in the below in the plot below, in the minimum temperature, this is for the one minimum temperature value of the day. So we took it for all the 5 days for the least recorded value, both for cool roof and non-cool roof, and saw the difference. And for the minimum temperature, we didn't see a lot of difference, but for maximum temperature on the right, we saw some differences around 1 degree. This is again the highest value of each day, which was taken for the houses, and an average was calculated in this. So overall, the average temperature difference that we saw for the Jodhpur cool roof pilot intervention was a temperature difference of 1.3 degrees. And this could be attributed to, like, usually with cool roof installation, the temperature difference can come around 2 to 3 degrees. But with this, I think because the household typology was different, some houses had tin installation, some houses were having different kind of structures, or some were kacha. So there was difference in temperature, and we couldn't get that increase temperature difference as we were anticipating. But we tried to do the same cool roof implementation in Lucknow at a PMAY site, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana site. Again, this was done in collaboration with Mahila Housing Trust. So here you can see those 3 steps: cleaning of the roof on the left, the implementation, the application of white paint, and then pre and post data collection, again for which Mahila Housing Trust worked with the PMAY residents on how to record these temperatures. And in terms of pre-study survey, we tried to just understand that what are we like looking into in terms of gender distribution. So we can see that 69% of the respondents were male. Most of the respondents were above 45 years of age. Monthly income for the PMAY residents was up to 15,000 for 85% of the population. And 77% of them believed that there were school disruptions that they were seeing due to heat. And a lot of them had already awareness of heat stress symptoms like fatigue, headache, nausea, fever, and so on. So for Lucknow, again, we did the same kind of average to see what was the difference in temperatures, again for the minimum in the day, for maximum, and for average. And we saw around 3.2 degrees difference between the cool roof and the non-cool roof houses. And this is again because the houses were same in terms of construction, and there was a uniformity. We could see better results for the city of Lucknow here. Also, we tried to understand the thermal comfort rating by respondents. There were some questions asked based on their sleeping patterns and their overall well-being. And on the left, you can see pre-paint, 92% said that they were feeling a bit okay in terms of thermal comfort. When we painted and we asked the same question back, around 22% said they were feeling better, and most of them, around 77%, said they were feeling from good to excellent. So 44% for good and 33% were excellent. Just sharing some more insights. So pre-paint, the insights were something like that all respondents felt that the heat wave season has been increasing. They felt the productivity was decreased, and 77% households also felt that extreme heat had negatively affected the children's education due to school closures and accessibility challenges. There was cut in power, household power supply, water shortage, and so on. But post paint insights, they felt that there was change in comfort factor after painting cool roofs. They were using less AC cooler. This is something that we couldn't quantify, but we asked more in terms of understanding, and they were spending more time indoors after painting cool roofs. And they also said the number of working hours improved, and they agreed that their sleep quality was better after painting cool roofs. There were some challenges and insights during implementation, which the Mahila Housing team shared with us. So there was some coordination with multiple houses. Sometimes there can be an accessibility issue in terms of keeping the data sensors and going and checking those readings again and again. There could be reluctance to that. Then while we were doing this implementation, the people who were painting the cool roofs, this was done in peak heat season last year in 2024. They felt that the work was being interrupted due to heat, and there were extreme heat conditions that were posing health risks to the painters that time. Also, in terms of heat-driven behavioral challenges, the residents did mention that because when the cool roofs were not painted, they were staying more on the lower floors to avoid high temperatures. Many residents were leaving their homes temporarily or either traveling to other places to kind of escape the extreme heat. And because the cool roof was painted on of course, the top floor, there were an increased heat-related illnesses for the residents of the top floor. And once it was painted, there was change and people were staying more indoors. In terms of approach for supporting policy action on cool roof, at NRDC, what we are trying to do is do pilot demonstrations. The skill, scalability, and implementation, that is something that is required for cool roofs, but we are trying to do these demonstrations to create more local evidence base, create impact assessment, and document this local evidence. And then outreach and awareness is also something that we're doing through our publications, stakeholder engagement, and campaigns. And then we do have international expertise in terms of our global offices, which we're trying to leverage on and do knowledge exchange and build confidence. In terms of building cool roof ecosystem and scale up, the focus is to also look into national policy and guidelines, like work with MoHUA and NDMA, work with states, like we're trying to work right now with Telangana and Uttar Pradesh for the cool roof policies, and create outreach and awareness and build the ecosystem for implementation in terms of impact assessment, monitoring, setting up of a cool roof rating council, which the cooling energy and efficiency team is working on, and then also looking into performance and aging of these cool roofs. I would just want to conclude by saying that passive strategies such as cool roofs, they offer low cost scalable solutions. And we have seen with our work in these areas where we're also working on heat action plans that they do reduce heat stress and energy demand in city. Cool roofs definitely require very minimal structural changes, and the materials are affordable, locally available, and easy to apply. What we tried to do with our study was do immediate post-application impacts, whereas a long-term performance of reflective paints can also be seen. Typically, it requires a reapplication in 4 to 5 years. But this is something that can be an important opportunity for future research. Also, the pilot projects in Lucknow and Jodhpur, they were not only technically effective, but also they were socially accepted and economically viable for us. The key takeaway here for us is that cool roofs, when implemented through people-centered and policy-aligned approaches, they can be equitable, replicable, and effective for urban heat resilience. There were some barriers to scale. We see some barriers to scale, like low awareness sometimes among the residents. There are limited financing mechanisms, which we are trying to suggest in our heat action plans. If we can try to tap into some centrally sponsored schemes and get in or do some CSR fundraising to get funding for these cool roofs, it can serve as a great starting point to combat heat. Also, there's shortage of skilled labor and weak integration into planning and policy frameworks. So there are bottlenecks, but I think that we think as an organization, this is something that definitely requires scalability. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ritika, for the insightful presentation. I request all the participants, if they have any questions, they can put it in Q&A or chat. Meanwhile, we have received a few questions in chat as well as in Q&A. In chat, Dr. Kiran have already answered a few. But one more question from Ziten is that I think it's for Dr. Ritika, for you. So how long were the data points collected on efficacy of cool roofs? What was the investment involved in the paint and tracking matrices? And associated question is 40 degrees centigrade cool enough? And what was the technology used in Jodhpur? So you may answer in a combined. So
Just a second. Sorry, yes. Okay, just a second. I'm just trying to find this question because I was just trying to close the window. I'm sorry.
it is chat, in chat. I can put it in
Okay.
question. So let me put it in there as well.
Yes.
So you can open the Q&A and I don't know. So I can't type there.
We can read
But
the question.
So the last question in the chat you can read now, I think.
Yes. Okay. I think so. In terms of I think what I got was that in terms of the length of the days we have written. So we did this study for like 7 to 10 days, but we took only data for 5 days because there were some issues with the sensors. So continuous data, which was available for 5 days, we took that. Second question is, I'm sorry, can you please repeat it? I'm sorry, I think I missed it.
Let me help you. So what was the investment involved in the patent tracking method? So
Investment.
he wants to know like the cost associated and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have the direct cost with me because we work with our on-ground partners in this in Mahila Housing Trust, but I know the costs associated are very minimal. Like there is buying of paint, and I think it costs maybe around, I'm again not sure, I'm just saying a ballpark figure, but the paint can cost around something around, I think till 10,000, I don't know, 10,000 INR. And then there is only application, and usually that is done by beneficiaries from Mahila Housing Trust also. The cost is very minimal, but I can get back on the exact cost if there are any other overheads on this. This is what I am aware of. It is not something that is very cost intensive.
So yeah, and another question from Chandan Khanna is that I'm reading. So it may be for both of you. So like cool roofs and reflective paints do help in reduction of heat, but its life cycle they release large amount of micro and nanoplastics. So how does one manage the negative health impacts emanating from these large scale implementation plans that are currently being promoted, and can't natural materials like lime can be used instead? So he wants to know about the negative impacts associated with the these cool paints or the synthetic chemicals, or we have some natural materials or paints instead? So you can comment both on that.
You want to go first, Ritika? Okay.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So answer for that is, I think as the paint technologies has been developing, I think you definitely would see a change in natural materials being used more for paints. So we have moved from oil-based paint to the water-based paint now. Oil-based paints used to have a lot of emissions which affected the human health. Now we are talking about water-based paints. But the polymer content within the paint is something that is there everywhere. Like the paint that was used in our case was a normal, off the shelf from market that we got. We partnered with Nippon Paint. Nippon Paint produced that material, so it was only the reflective characteristic that helped us to achieve the heat mitigation in our case. Yeah, microplastic could be a issue, but in the that is in the outdoors, right? Like, so how we look at it, maybe to address this microplastic issue, I think we have to research further and then come up with new solutions. Yeah, that much I can say.
Another question from Rosini. She wants to know like how is the cool roof is created and what are the materials used in that paints and all. What is the life coating wear and vulnerability to LV and mold in humid climates, like so the impact of like humidity in on the material we are using or the coating we are using.
Yeah, so there is definitely an impact of humidity on the effect of cool material. As I showed in the initial slides, if there is a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, there is little possibility of the absorbed heat going back to the space. So that can actually hinder the heat, re-emission back to the space. That's why the effectiveness of cool or the radiative materials is little less in humid climates where the atmospheric moisture is very high. compared to climates which are having very clear sky, less moisture. So that is one effect. Or the second is, I think, the aging, right, that you had mentioned. Any reflective, surfaces would collect the dust over the time. So there has been research, I think, if we talk about traditional materials, glazed surfaces can help to remove the dust quite easily. For pool paints, now we are talking about some nano clear cover, which is similar to the automobile. You have a clear cover which is easy to clean. Such technologies are available, but the reflectance would probably change, would reduce over the time, but not. But still, the surface is reflective, right, compared to a conventional dark surface.
So one question I'm getting again and again is the audience wants to understand the cost associated with these kind of reflective pans or the cold roof. So I think many have asked this question. So if you can give a ballpark number or percentage of the construction materials we use in the buildings, or the percentage of capex associated, if you can give that, any of you.
But one thing I can say that I think we have been talking about cold roof materials for last more than 15 years. Now, I think they are quite widely available. There are so many market players. It might, the cost might vary from technology to technology, because some use some insulating materials in the cool roof, some use some different minerals, some use some recycled materials. It depends on the technology, but it is not very different from the normal paint that we buy in the market that is currently available. So I would say the cost increase may be up to 10, 15, not more than that, if you compare with the normal. Yeah. Normal.
Meanwhile, Dr. Ritika, you can answer one question is that what are the major challenges associated, because as Dr. Kiran mentioned that these we have been talking since last 15-20 years about the reflective coatings, cool roofs, etc. But what are the major challenges we are facing on the ground, like so that the adoption or the penetration of cool roof or reflective paints is very less comparatively. Still, we have seen that it can provide a 4 to 5 degrees centigrade, even higher temperature difference in the inside of the building, but the adoption still remains very low. So, what are the major challenges you might have faced in the on the field, and how can be overcome to increase the penetration? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the community members that we usually work with, we do these pilots with them to make them see the differences and usually get their buy-in from there. So while we talk to them, there is definitely a buy-in. Like they would want to have these cool roof deployed in their houses as well. But I think the idea that these are more expensive, so in terms of cost, there can be some reluctance. What we can try, what we have been trying to do is to, like I mentioned, that do their capacity building, also, work on the awareness strategy on how these cool roofs are more beneficial. And then sometimes with the some fundings available already with the partners and institutional fundings, do these pilots already to, like show the results. But challenges seem to remain, I think, on the cost front, I think so, because there's a lot of misconception that these paints can be way more expensive than normal paints. So I think this is one of the major thing. But for cities, the challenges are different, like implementation I mean, the scalability is an issue, and scalability financing comes in. There is lack of awareness, and also I think that there can be a like integration into policy, like Telangana cool roof policy is there. We're also trying to like advocate for the Uttar Pradesh urban cooling policy as well. If it comes into the policy format with government building, schools, and other places already, I think there can be scalability.
One more question from Amit. He wants to know like that. Did any of the beneficiaries indicate a willingness to pay for the cold roofs?
Yes.
Also, would these work for HIG, MIG households? I don't know the full forms, but yeah, I'm repeating
Yeah.
all. So he wants to know that would these work for HIG, MIG households as well?
Yes. So, like I said, we work with the low-income housing groups. Like when I visited Jodhpur for a field visit, if we ask them that, like, will you buy these kudos after deployment, and they see differences, that time they're like, we'll buy it. And, you do this pilot and we'll buy it. And they usually do it also. There is the reapplication that is required. In a lot of houses that we did these school roofs in Jodhpur, they went ahead and they are doing reapplication along with Mahila Housing Trust. And there is like they do try to do these CSR activities also, to raise costs for this. And for HIG and MIG, I think it can be done. I mean, a lot of we attended this with Griha. We kept in June a session again on cool roof, and there were houses where these cool roofs have been deployed in apartments, and it is quite possible, I think. Yeah.
One question is about policy. So they want to understand that how this topic is being implemented or being included in the policies like ECSBC or the state level policies. That's how they are incorporating this topic in their policies. Is there any push or not, like the sustainable cooling system, sustainable building designs, etc.?
That is a question for me, right? For anybody.
Yes, you can answer, but I think most
Yeah.
probably you can answer it because you have been working in the state.
Yes.
And
Yes, I mean, so with there are policies in place. Like if I talk about the Telangana cool roof policy, it is in place where they have mandated the government buildings, schools, and all the rooftops of government authority buildings to be painted with this solar reflective white paints. But I think it is not there for commercial buildings. That it is not there for also vulnerable sections, which are actually facing more issues around heat. So sometimes when these policies are there for government buildings, they already do have air conditioning in place. So the policy is there, but it is still not enforceable. We see it with Telangana. It's there on paper, and the buildings are being mandated, but it's still not happening. What we are seeing it now is a challenge in terms of enforcement. But then this is something that needs to reach out to people who probably do not have access to air conditioning. There is a lot of inequity in terms of exposure to heat. So what we are trying to do here now is with our pilots as part of our heat action plans is to reach out to more vulnerable sections. So yes, policy there, the Telangana cool roof policy, and we're working on the UP urban cool policy also to see how it can be enforced. But enforcement and how is it happening or not, that is totally up to the state if they do it or not.
next question is, I think, for Dr. Kiran, is for you.
Yeah.
He wants to know that
It is from Vidyarthi, right?
Yes,
Vidyarthi, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So I can read the question. Yeah. So it is actually from a study that has been conducted in mid latitudes in European countries, like based on several cities that the data is presented, where they mentioned the city albedo is actually having a higher significance compared to all other factors. Of course, I agree with you that climate factor also would contribute, how much the city would retain the heat and or release back to the space. Humidity is the key factor. Sky condition, as you have seen, because climate is little complex. It's not just one factor, right? Like we need to look at wind, we need to look at the sky condition, diurnal variation, temperature variation. So looking at all the aspects, one thing that I can say is the humidity percentage in the atmosphere can have an impact on, heat retention and release to the space.
One more question from Rishabh. So I think it's for you, Ritika. And he wants to understand that since the school roof has been programs for low income housings have been recommended since 1780s or maybe before that. So what are the key implementation level learnings that the Jodhpur pilot had that previous programs might have missed? So yeah, learnings basically out of the Jodhpur study you want to say.
One second, I'm just trying to find this question. Just a second. And
It's in
is
Q&A.
it? It's Q&A. Okay.
from-
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just having some issue with my network. Can you please repeat the last part of the question?
So the question is like, you can point out or they can highlight the key implementation learnings from the Jodhpur study, which the earlier programs might have missed or something.
Right. So, I think the quantification of benefits and then again, like capacity building of the beneficiaries of the community action groups that we were working in. We did a pilot study in 2017 in 4 cities. Again, it was in Bhopal, Surat, Hyderabad. And that time also Jodhpur was in pilot city for cool roof pilot. 4 cities were taken. But I think that time we didn't do this kind of quantification study in terms of perception and how the real change is coming in terms of capacity building also. So that is, I think, the only thing. But otherwise, in terms of implementation, there is always buy-in. Though that time we did couple of houses. This time in Jodhpur, there was wider acceptance. Like 1651 houses were being painted. Then we went back again, and then we worked with some slum dwellers, and like there were 80 to 90 houses painted again. So I think there is wider acceptance. People in Jodhpur now, if we go back for the work, they know what white paints do. Like they will just there's another study that we're doing right now with University of Cambridge again on cool roofs. And when we talk to them now, people know what are cool roofs, and they wanted deployed. They want to take the onus and go for repainting after 3 to 4 years. Sometimes if it doesn't last, they have a complete buy-in. So I think that is something that has changed for them in terms of like awareness around how it can benefit them and their overall well-being.
Yeah. One question from myself. I also asked one question is that, like, what if we do the cost benefit analysis of the cool roof or the reflective paints? What is the typical payback period we guess, like, by reducing the 4-5 degrees centigrade temperature, we have to run our air conditioner, I think less, right? So the energy consumption will be a bit less. So in that case, if we can calculate a rough estimate number, is there any number that we can get out of this reflective coating, reflective paints, etc.? Maybe in a climatic condition like Jodhpur, so that or Rajasthan, any hot and dry climatic conditions we can take, for example. So
I think there can be a lot of energy savings. We have not done it yet because we always are like you see for Jodhpur and for PMAY, we've been working with very low income housing groups. So we didn't do it yet, but I'm sure like there is evidence available which has pointed out towards the fact that there are energy costs that can be saved by implementation of cool roof. Like in
Maybe
the
I could.
perception. Sure.
I
Yeah.
could add to what Dr. Ritika is saying. I think if you look at the contribution of envelope load on the overall cooling load of a building, it's over 30 to 40%. So in that sense, having a reflective roof can actually reduce the peak load up to 15%, is what we have seen from our studies. But I think overall energy consumption in a year in climates like Jodhpur, like dry climate, definitely up to 10% energy savings must be possible with, if we can have a cool roof as a system.
And so one more question is repeating again and again in the chat box as in Q&A as well. So that is on the life cycle assessment or the life LC analysis of these chemical, synthetic chemicals or synthetic paints we are using. So Dr. Kiran, you have mentioned in your presentation that there are a few materials which are either natural way or so what is the LCA type trade-off we can see in these synthetic chemicals versus the the other alternatives we may have, and is there an implementation of those kind of materials which are less impactful than the one we are using from the market?
No, any reflective material would have definitely some impact, but how much impact is what, like, and its spectral behavior. If you are addressing the higher infrared range and then want to re-emit back to the space, that would have the maximum impact. Otherwise, any reflective, can reflect back the short wave radiation, but it is the infrared part that we need to address. So we have to really look at the spectral behavior of that material. There are some natural materials which can actually give you that. Research has been going on in that direction.
Yes. Great. So I think end of the questions here. And I don't see any other questions. In the question and answer as well, we have checked all the questions. So I think that's all, right? So again, thank you, Dr. Ritika and Dr. Kiran, for the wonderful presentation and addressing all the questions of the attendees. Thanks to all the participants for joining this webinar. Hope this have added a few knowledge and information you might have been seeking before joining the webinar. So thank you all, and here we end the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.